Cool. Welcome to the Office 365 User Group, the Boston Office 365 User Group. My name is Dave Lozzi. I'm a solution architect with Slom Consulting. My counterpart here, Mike Dixon, senior consultant with Wellington Street Consulting, and Dimitri. He's a partner with Turn Digital who cannot make it tonight. Hopefully, he's watching online or will be soon. If you have any questions, problems, comments, want to speak, want to sponsor, want to just give money, want to babysit, wash my car, you can talk to one of us. Any complaints, problems, or anything like that? Dimitri, yeah. Reach out to Dimitri on that one today. That'd be great. Quick show of hands. Curious about how you guys heard about us. There's a couple of repeat faces, but there are definitely some new faces here tonight. How many of you found out about us through Eventbrite? Just exploring Eventbrite, got an email, anything like that? Cool. LinkedIn, Meetup, cool. YouTube. We actually had somebody last month who learned about us through YouTube, cool, which was so rewarding for me. Twitter, Facebook, email, Boss36, our website, which doesn't exist right now, so if you said yes, they'd be lying. Or friend or colleague, word of mouth. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Well, we are very glad that you are all here. Thank you for taking a little survey. It helps us kind of understand how people are showing up and where we should be investing our time in the digital space. If you missed it, last month we had Mike Gilronin. Yeah, thank you. Speak about a simple survey solution using Forms, Flow, and SharePoint. That recording is available up on our YouTube channel. Check it out if you're interested. He walked through a very cool use case of using Microsoft Forms, which is now GA for the enterprise, collecting survey results there, using Flow and storing some of that data in SharePoint, and kind of talking through also the business case around that, which I'm drawing a blank now as to what the actual business case was. Do you remember? I forget what it was. It was a good business case. Regular ethics. It was an ethics use case, I think.
Oh, that's right. They were doing ethics quizzing.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So what we like to do during our sessions is talk about what some of the big updates in Office 365 since the last time we met. This will not be every update, as that would be the entire session if we wanted to talk about every update in the last 30 days. If you are interested in every single update, our Twitter handle tweets every single update Microsoft posts from 25 of their blogs. So we follow 25 blogs and we auto-post everything that they post. So if you want to keep up, follow us on Twitter.
And how do we do that, Dave?
Go to Twitter. Oh, how do we do that?
How did we automate that?
We use Flow.
Process?
Yeah, we use Flow.
That's awesome.
So I have 25 flows attached to 25 blogs. But they're nested, so it's kind of iced anyway. Yeah. I'll share more detail when it's a little more ironed out. So the first update, anybody here using Yammer in the enterprise? One. Cool. Yammer, Microsoft is removing some capabilities and features of Yammer. The native org chart feature, the recent activity module on the homepage, sync contacts for the mobile apps, and Yammer desktop notification application, notifier application. A lot of these are being replaced or already have better versions of it within the Office 365 ecosystem. So opposite of Microsoft, what they would usually do is just run two code sets, but they're actually retiring one code set and using the better code set, which is really good for us users and consumers of their service. Now we can go to one spot to get the org chart, for example, as opposed to thinking, do I use Yammer's or Dell's? My Analytics. Anybody using My Analytics more than just looking at your own analytics? I mean, that's all you really can do right now. I've checked it out a few times. My work-life balance is awesome. I work like 4 hours a week because I use my client's laptop for everything, so it doesn't pick that up. Some really interesting stats in there. Two new features have come out that it'll remind you within 3 weeks if you haven't had a one-on-one with your manager. So it knows who your manager is, it knows your calendar and their calendar, and will check it out and be like, hey, you haven't scheduled something. It'll also tell your manager that as well, that you haven't heard from your reports in over 3 weeks. So it's a good reminder. kind of adding some of the additional. It's adding capabilities to My Analytics as opposed to just being a reporting tool. It allows us to see some of introducing some new capabilities.
Is that configurable as to the frequency with which it does that, or?
No idea.
Okay.
That's a great question. And there's also new user adoption resources available. So the link across the bottom, there are 3 areas that Microsoft's provided a lot of new documentation and resources on how to adopt the My Analytics. Definitely worth checking out. It's more than just a pretty report. It does provide value if used correctly. Planner in Teams now has more stuff. So previously, the Planner tab was cool. You could just drop Planner in there, and you would have the columns of Planner tasks. Now you can actually look at charts, view the schedule, filter your results. So a lot of the capabilities you would need to leave Teams to do, you can now do within Teams, which is a big plus. So kind of like why wasn't it working before type feature, but it is working now. So that's exciting. Anybody here using Planner yet? Few of us? Teams? Okay, more Teams bodies. That's good. For those of us in Planner, especially if you're holding out for Planner to get like certain features like guest access, it is now available. So you can now invite your external users into Planner boards, which is a much desired improvement. I have clients using Trello because of that capability. So hopefully they can consider jumping over to Planner.
Is that GA?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Not sure about that.
You can click the link at the bottom later. Usually I made sure the first paragraph I copied in here would say the timeline, but yeah, I don't know. The question was, is it GA? I don't know. Anyway, I mentioned it before, Forms is now enterprise ready. So if you don't know what Forms is, it's a survey and quizzing tool. So it allows you to collect survey results, much like SurveyMonkey or all the other type of surveys that are out there. It does allow you to either make an anonymous survey or connect to the Office 365 identity store so you can know who answered those surveys. In comparison to like SurveyMonkey, I would say it's probably got 60% of the functionality. Like it doesn't do paging of questions. So like you just have one long page of questions. You can't like page through questions in Forms yet. So it's still pretty limited, but it is GA. It is fully available and fully reliable. So it's not in preview mode. If it's in preview mode, you really can't highly recommend it because it's still in preview mode. It's out of preview mode. And if you're curious to know what Forms can do and how it integrates, watch our session from last month. Mike covered all that fun stuff. Microsoft has upped the storage allocation for free. They increased our SharePoint online storage by about 20 times. That's 2,000%, 200%, 20 times. But previously you would get a half a gig per user for your tenant. Now we get 10 gigs per user in your tenants. So that table there gives a couple of examples based upon head counts. So that's a big plus. Anybody else really excited about that, or am I just the only one that gets excited about storage? That's fair. Excel, this is in preview. Actually, this is not even preview. It's the step before preview. I think it's only rolling out to preview. Yeah. The Office Insiders. Some of the cool KPIs and I can't think. Data visualizations from Power BI are coming into Excel. So these examples here, this insert chart on the left and those nonsense, crazy stuff on the right, is going to be native within Excel coming soon. So they're taking some of those really cool capabilities that you can do in Power BI, bringing it into Excel, so we don't need to leverage and leave Excel to get some of this cool reporting capabilities. I don't know what those things do, but they're pretty cool looking. Anybody have concerns about GDPR? Microsoft has a lovely article here. It's a blog article with a guy standing in front of servers about GDPR. It's a long blog article. At the bottom, there are links to all their official documentation. So definitely worth checking out if you're in the area of having to stick within GDPR compliance or prove that out. or just curious about how Microsoft is handling that. Well worth the read. SharePoint Migration Tool version 2 is now available. Version 1 only lets you migrate files. Now you can do lists. So you can migrate lists from SharePoint site to SharePoint site, or from a CSV to SharePoint. It now also supports on-premises authentication. It will create site structure for you in the targets. And if you happen to have data in a JSON structure, you can use JSON. They were really proud of that one. I guess that's cool. Microsoft also announced all these training resources. This will be a regular slide in our deck moving forward, but I just wanted to share that these links here are a bunch of training resources for small businesses, for IT pros, for end users, and admins. So these are small video clippets, these are reference guides, these are resources for us to help improve the adoption of Office 365. And finally, we have, I shared this last month. If you're curious about what Office 365 has been doing for updates, this page here lets you see every single update that they've ever rolled out since 2015. So you can explore this if you're looking to find out what's been recent or what's changed since last year when a user says it used to work, and you can kind of argue with them some more. So that resource is available. That's it for the updates. Did I miss anything big? Anybody hear anything else? Okay. I had dozens and dozens to pick from. I had to narrow it down, so I hope I picked the right ones. Big thanks to Turn Digital as our platinum sponsor. Turn Digital is covering all of our back office costs for the year, including the food for the sessions when we don't have sponsors for the sessions. So big thanks to Turn Digital. Thank you. If anybody's interested in sponsoring, we are looking for session-specific sponsors as well, and you will get all the love and praise from us. And that's all I have. Without further ado, the main event. We need walk-on music. David Pileggi, come on down. I'll be nice and put yours up for you.
Oh, you're too kind.
There you go.
Awesome, thanks. I'm ready for my close-ups, because I'll do you to Bill, but anyway. Good evening. Okay, is this, a mosaic, or is this a crowd of people? I mean, seriously. Okay, if I can't get a reaction out of you with what I'm wearing, you guys need to go to the doctors immediately, if not soon. Okay, so this is just a stunt. Okay. All right, so let me explain. Woohoo! They can see again.
Still see the pants.
Yeah. So to give you an idea why.
I did that for you.
I know you did, and that's the reason why I'm wearing the MC Hammer pants. I was just going to wear my cape.
So this is my fault?
This is absolutely your fault. Or you helped induce it. How's that? So there I am with my mustache, looking like Weird Al Yankovic. That's okay today. We'll go ahead and kill all this off, and we'll get the party started once again. There we go. Awesome. So thanks for coming again. Thank you for allowing me to speak. This is a Staples case study from greenfield to culture. My wife said, what in the world is that? So let me explain really quick what greenfield to culture is. Greenfield is something that I was kind of new to for a while, but I kind of accepted it extremely quickly. Greenfield is when you walk into a situation where you're actually implementing a solution that has never, ever existed before. When I walked into Staples, they did not have SharePoint. They did not have, let's see here, what else did they not have? Skype for Business, OneDrive. None of that was actually deployed. A lot of it was old systems, shared drives, personal drives, and things like that. They were using Jabber at the time. We'll definitely get into that as well. And it was only a subset of the people, mostly in IT/SDS, and that was about it. So there was a lot of room to grow. That's where greenfield comes in. And one of the things is, I think the number one question Every time I go to SharePoint Saturdays, I go to Office 365 User Groups, it does not matter. One of the biggest things is, okay, we've got this thing, how do we make it adopted? That's one of the biggest things that is constantly asked. Is there a silver bullet? I'm sorry, unless you're the Lone Ranger, no silver bullets for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what Staples has gone through, and hopefully from our pains and our successes and our jubilation, if you will, you can actually learn from what we have done and actually work with it. So let's go ahead and get started. You probably see me in the movie That Teacher. Okay, and also The Professor. And of course my favorite, My Pet Dinosaur. And you're not buying this. Okay, fine. Fine, I guess I'll go with the real introduction then. I've been working in IT for over 17 years now. SharePoint, actually got to change that number. That's a typo, it's actually 13. Yeah, good times. I can't believe that's from 2005 to 2018. So it is definitely 13. I've consulted for 10 of those years. I've only been in the private sector the last couple. Let's see here. I could go on for a while. I've been in the speaking circuit since 2009. I absolutely love the community. This is the reason why I love to speak. If you haven't figured that out, I love having fun with you all. Love to go to SharePoint or SharePint, or in this case, Office Pint.
Drink 365.
Drink 365. I like that even better. Excellent. So let's go into the prequel. When I was a consultant, I would go into large, major corporations, medium, small corporations. It did not matter. I would go in, I would come up with this awesome plan for SharePoint or for Office 365. It was an awesome plan. It was exciting. And the money would run out before we actually implemented. It's like, that is the most awesome plan we've ever seen. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. And so what ended up happening is this happened over and over again, and I never actually got to see it from the planning phase all the way through to the actual user adoption and becoming part of the culture. Staples comes along, and that literally changed. I actually got to walk in right after someone was John Wayne, and there he goes off in the sunset on his trusty steed, and I was actually there from the green fields, meaning all we have right now is a governance document, and we haven't released anything else yet. What do we do? And I've been taking them from there and actually bringing them into an actual Office 365 cultural experience. So let me set some expectations. I'm not going to share just the good stuff, because let's face it, we don't learn from that. I'm also, lecture style talk means if you have questions, raise them. This is for you. I could talk for a long, long time, and a lot of you who know me know that very well. So, so if you have questions, please feel free to bring them up. If you have stories or anecdotes that come in to play with what I'm sharing, please do. That's the whole reason for a user group, is we're here to bounce ideas and suggestions off each other, because let's face it, the only thing short is a behind it, where we say, hi, my name is Dave, I do Office 365. And then you go, hi, Dave, and so forth. I mean, we're just short of that at times. And then other times it's really exciting. Also, I'll do as much as I can as far as sharing recommendations from what we have learned, and say, okay, we went down this bunny trail, don't do that. And I'll give you the reasons as to why you shouldn't do that. So the agenda, I'm going to use the Wheel of Fortune over here on the right, the good, the bad, and the lessons learned. We'll go through, we're going to go into from our release agenda into deep dives of some of the things that we have released formally in Office 365, and of course the recommendations afterwards. For those of you who may have recognized this deck, I do apologize to you. I wanted to do a lot more with this, and I blame Fortnite for that. So I kid. See, at least a couple, okay, some of you, for those of you who have no idea what Fortnite is probably a good thing. So I had to pretend that I'm in the know, and I'm hip still.
Can't give it away.
Missed it by that much.
Keith does a pretty good job too.
Thank you. It's my Office 365 cape. You like? It's fabulous. Okay, anyways, enough about my fashion faux pas. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So release agenda, you have two different choices when you look at Office 365. Either A, you release it each piece slowly, one at a time, or you do a big bang and say, hey, check Office 365 out. It's got all these different applications. Have fun. And then just kind of hide and duck behind a sand bunker. Second thing is time for release, the timeline. How do we release it? And then, of course, after timeline intro as well. Singular versus Big Bang, I've already touched upon it a little bit. Because we were greenfield, let's just say the average age, I did not sway as much as when I walked into Wayfair, for example. Wayfair, I walked in, is a very young work demographic there. I walked in and I actually skewed it probably 20 points into older generation. And that was just me doing that. We, on the other hand, at Staples, we have a lot of people with a lot of tenure who have been around for a while. And as you probably know, when people are in a certain location for a long period of time, greenfield is very scary. A lot of times you're going to deal with, but we've always done it this way. That is the most devastating words that could come out of your employees' mouths, because that means they are not as willing to change. I'll try to be as nice as possible. But the long and the short of it is they are going to be less likely to want to change unless you give them a real good reason to do so. Only one resource to support Office 365, and you're looking at them. And at the time when I wrote this deck, it was at 25,000 information workers. Since then, we have renewed our EA agreement. We now have F1 licenses for all our sales associates as well, which jumped that number up another 30,000. So I've been kind of busy. Fortunately, I have had some help in the Skype for Business area, which is definitely good. And thank goodness there was an email team that they're like absolute wizards that help me on the Exchange side of things, or else I would definitely, instead of looking like this, I'd probably look like Curly. Let's see here. We took time. When the time was necessary, we actually did it right. We did do communication. We actually did some levels of training as well, proof of concept. The CAPE is actually a proof of that. I've done things like Tech Tuesdays, where I go in the cafeteria of our headquarters, and I would be there for 4 hours, basically just with a bunch of different computers, answering questions. I had a Surface Hub up there as well. Few other things just to try to get people to ask questions. And after they got over the key part, they would actually talk to me and ask questions as things were being released to them. So the release timeline, we started with Yammer. Oddly enough, and this Yammer was actually the public version of Yammer. Someone say, hey, that Yammer thing looks like a good idea. They signed up for the public version. Yeah, good times. And so this was prior to the ability for Microsoft to actually port a public into a tenant. And so when we did end up getting a tenant, every single thing was transferred over by hand. That was awesome. I'm glad I wasn't a part of that. So Yammer started in 2015. After that, we started with email. It's real easy. Let's face it, guys. Having email on premise, not really all that cost effective, considering email has been in the cloud since AOL times. So remember when you could actually plaster an entire house with those AOL disks that would come in the mail at least 20 times a day? If you obviously you're too young to remember if you're not laughing. So, because you know it's true. So long story short, email has been in the cloud for quite a while. I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue to continue on. After that, we did OneDrive. In the spring of 2016, we actually released just OneDrive, not SharePoint, OneDrive only. and actually had the synchronization client on all of our images and pushed it out via, oddly enough, BigFix.
Is that OneDrive Business?
OneDrive for Business, yes. Yeah. I gotta be careful because you're right. So OneDrive for Business. Yeah, that's the thing I love you about you guys. You keep me honest because let's face.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but based on that time frame, that was right when Microsoft was reinventing the OneDrive sync client about every 3 weeks.
That is correct. And so oddly enough, we had BigFix, the guys who run our BigFix, we're going to SCCM, thank goodness, but BigFix, let's just say they kind of look like the slot machines over in Vegas after about the 4th month because they had to keep pushing out either patches, fixes, updates. It was nightmarish at best, and that was because our timing was perfect. No sarcasm included. Okay, wait a minute. I'll pick that for later. Anyway, after that, SharePoint and then was in 2016, and then Skype for Business was in 2017, October of last year. So that is the way that we actually released each of the individual pieces in our timeline. Before we actually released, this is a question that comes up, we actually had a governance document written in place before we even released it. One of the good things that happened being greenfield, we actually were able to do things in the correct order instead of letting it go and it's like, oh man, governance could be really useful right about now, and then try to implement it after the fact. So that was one thing I have to praise. The company who was prior to us actually was one of our sponsors here, the Office 365 User Group. Lighthouse. So they did a really good job and actually steered Staples in the right direction so that when I was able to come on board, I was able to read the governance document that was set in place prior to even the releases, and it was a lot better and it was a lot less painful. So what was good about it? Again, allowed sufficient time for us to communicate. Communication, if you want to release it to a greenfield or even to individuals, let's say you want to re-release, say you have a low adoption rate around OneDrive and you want to try to push that out again. It's never too late to actually go ahead and push that to your people. But allow yourself sufficient time to communicate. We are actually going to do a release of SharePoint and OneDrive, probably either end of this year or early next year. And the reason for that is because of the fact it kind of got stepped over due to the fact that Skype for Business all of a sudden came in a hurry. We'll definitely get to that as well. Let's see. Go ahead. I hear bings as well.
Yeah.
Do they not hear me?
You don't need to worry about the things.
Okay.
The box. We
Dip.
have a question online.
Okay, hit me.
From Chrissy. Within the timeline, especially from OneDrive for Business to SharePoint, were your folks on board with naming conventions, folder structures, etc.? Was there any resistance or pushback?
Good times. So, was everyone able to hear you repeating that question? Did you have your mic on? Okay, sure. All right. So the question was on the timeline when we released OneDrive, were we able to deal with people using naming conventions as well as folder structure? The answer is not exactly. However, when we did send out the communication, we did have in the communication embedded things like when you upload into OneDrive, do not have funky fresh characters like the $, ? Slashes, double periods, etc. So we kind of tried in the communication to give them a high level of training. We also had Brainstorm as well. We actually created a SharePoint site called the Office 365 Learning Portal. On Brainstorm had a widget, if you will, web part that we dropped onto the page, which actually would take them to Brainstorm's site and allow them to get training as well. So we did do a few things around that. Naming convention, let's face it, when you're coming off a file server system, I can talk about metadata, and you're going to glaze over like Bambi, just in front of the hunter. It's not going. It doesn't work too well. So one of the things that I did try to do to help them understand is like, look, file structure is possible in SharePoint and in OneDrive. Understand, once it gets to be this long, 256 characters, things tend to break permanently. So you do not want to go down to that level. I said, if you do a folder, that's fine. Do not rewrite War and Peace as the folder name. Keep it short and to the point, so that way the URL doesn't get too long. I taught them different things like that during that time, during the release. For the most part, it's been okay. However, now that people are starting to get used to it, they're like, oh, this OneDrive is awesome. And then what they do is they grab their documents, drag it and drop it over. And let's say we had some phenomenal issues arise when they did that. We're almost to email, so I'll give you one of the punchlines. Our inbox size for email prior to going to Office 365 was 50 megabytes. We called it mail jail. So guess what they had in their documents very, very often and very much and in plentiful numbers and sizes? PST files. And what happens if the PST file is still being used when you put it into OneDrive? Very bad things. Very bad things. So we had to teach people, do not put your PSTs in here. So there was certain things that did happen that we after the fact had to kind of back up. We had a vice president actually do that, and let's just say their PSTs were very large, and every single time that they tried to rewrite to each other or he signed onto a different computer, it duplicated, so he ended up filling up his entire OneDrive to the point where he couldn't delete, she couldn't add, etc. And we actually had to have Microsoft go into the back end to actually release stuff and expand it because there was nothing we could do. It was actually locked completely. So these are certain things you want to keep in mind.
So David, you talked about allowing sufficient time to communicate. How did you communicate? Weird stuff? Was it training? Was it just emails that went out?
Great question. So for those of you, when the communication, how did we communicate? So one of the things we did was we engaged corporate communications, and we, in our newsletter and on our intranet that's sitting on, you know what, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. I'm not gonna say it. All right, WebSphere. Yes, that's why I have an eye twitch. We used different means. We used our intranet, we used email, we used our monthly newsletter, we used direct email. We used different approaches over a matter, for most of these objectives, 3 to 4 months, saying, hey, it's coming, it's coming. When we actually migrated people from on-prem into email to Office 365, we would actually give them a heads up. It's like, okay, your group is the next group. You guys are going over. You're out of mail jail after this point. Here's what to expect. Here's how to use it. So
do you emphasize the what's in it for me for going into this new?
Absolutely. If you do not emphasize, and I highly recommend this, always make sure you emphasize why they want to change. Because if you do not do that, again, we always done it this way, it's going to boil up to the surface and you're going to have a much harder time of adoption. And let's face it, they don't really have much of a choice whether they like it or not, you pick up and move their mailbox into the cloud. But at the same time, it's still good practice to actually say, here are the benefits. Here is the reason why we as a company have actually decided to go down this pathway. And because we were somewhat more open and honest, we have a lot less pushback with the folk who like to use that phrase.
What version of Office were they using on the desktop? And were there any desktop, any upgrades as a part of this process?
Yeah, so the question for you online is, what version of desktop was Staples on? We were on Microsoft Office 2007. No, I'm just kidding. 2010. We were on 2010. So not.
Company right now like that.
I know. For some of you guys, I hear the grunting in the background. I'm with you. I get it. So the long and the short of it is, because of that, we end up at the same time had another initiative running in parallel, actually upgrading everyone to Office 365. I gotta be careful. I said Microsoft Office 365, as in which is 2016 but it has since been whitewashed. If you notice and you open it up like Word and stuff, it now says Office 365.
So with your Office
It does, but there's still going to be a version behind that.
Agreed. It's 2016. Agreed.
2016.
So I guess with Office 365, the other question is, how are you 3 months behind, 6 months? No, refresh.
So now the question is, what path do we choose as far as right now we're on deferred, which is if my memory serves correctly, is 3 months, I believe, or is that the 6 months? It might be the 6 months. I think it's 6 months. So we do have some early adopters that are actually on as the updates come out. I'm one of them. As the updates come out, we're on it because we want to know in advance so that we have the 6 months to actually be able to do that or deal with it. It's like, oh, this is going to be awesome when this is released to general availability. And so that's what we are doing as well. Great questions. So the bad, Office 365 is constantly changing and evolving. So yeah, good times. Remember when the tile was not SharePoint, it was Sites?
No, yeah.
Remember that? For those of you who don't, there was a tile in Office 365 that was called Sites. That was the link to the SharePoint environment. That being said, they decided to change it. What they did not tell us when they decided to change it, we knew it was coming. We were on the Forest program. They were telling us in advance. It's like it's great. It's like, oh, okay, no big deal. So they're changing the name of the tile until we actually went to it when it was released to our entire tenant. It was like, oh, by the way, it's powered by Office Graph. We didn't turn Office Graph on it yet, so everyone was calling into the help desk game. I think SharePoint is broken because it says at the top, contact your administrator because Office Graph isn't working. Oh, needless to say, we had an emergency change form go through, and I had to turn Office Graph on just so it would work. So different things like that, you have to understand, even if you think you're all up to it, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to think more like be water. You have to be able to kind of roll with the punches. And we had to do that in a lot of different situations. And that Sites to SharePoint tile was just one of the many.
So how long are you finding yourself heading to emergency change before? Because of the flexibility issue.
So
and how much time and effort does that cost you? So
I think it's more time. The time wasn't so bad because it was such an issue. We have ServiceNow as a help desk solution, so therefore I put in a change. I put it as an emergency. It went directly to my vice president, who I was actually speaking with at the time. He automatically gave the approval. I flipped the switch. Yes, it was a switch, but for companies our size, I'd be flipping burgers if I flipped the switch before I was given permission. So that's one of the things that so as far as resources lost, or energy lost, not so much, but it was something that we had to deal with being a company of a corporation of our size. Plans will be forced to be changed. I think just from we were going to release Office Graph later, Delve later. No, it was like that bit had to be flipped without a lot of preparation. Lessons learned, I talked about flexibility, awareness. Coming to this, I love the fact that they give you guys, hey, here's what's new in Office 365. Love these guys for it because I'll tell you right now, the laundry list is longer than my leg and I'm pretty tall. So it's pretty crazy how how Office 365 continues to change. You have to be aware of it, because if not, you will get blindsided. And as aware as I am, I've been blindsided plenty of times. Let's see here. In governance, I can't say it enough. If you've been to SharePoint Saturdays, governance is probably one of the most overused buzzwords ever. But at the same time, I'll tell you right now, it absolutely is necessary. Dave, let me know if there are other questions online.
Gotcha. Can you just shut the microphone, the camera, the speakers off on your computer?
Oh, I think I could possibly do that.
Slowly go on, so it's not distracting.
Let's do that. Okay. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. All right.
We do have a question, you guys say.
Okay, hit me.
The question is, how useful was Fast Track Team in your journey at all?
I'm hearing the snickers.
This is a safe space. It's public space, but it's a safe space.
Okay, I need some Play-Doh, a pony, and a crayon coloring book. No, I kid. Suck it up, Buttercup. Anyway, so long and the short of it is, well, my mind just took a vacation without me. I hope it comes back with one of those pieces of pizza. Ask that one more time again, just for posterity's sake.
How useful was Fast Track
Team
in your journey at all?
So, Fast Track Team, we did use Fast Track for different areas. We took it with a grain of salt. A lot of times we also went with Gold Partner, Microsoft Gold Partners as well. For example, for Skype for Business, we ended up using a Microsoft recommended partner, Dimension Data. So we ended up using them for a lot of that. The Fast Track Team, what we would do is we use them for the initial questions and for us to get ready to ramp up to a certain degree before we're like, okay, we're ready to make that choice. Let's use the proof of concept. And from that point to the proof of concept, we actually bring in a gold partner usually for that portion of the planning. Great question.
Did you use them for any sort of like execution of actual workload deployment migration?
Absolutely. For example, Dimension Data, when we did roll out Skype for Business, we used them very heavily in a lot of different areas. There are certain pieces that we had difficulty with. One of the things that we were looking at was also changing our Cisco telephone environment, telephone, the first time with my new mouth apparently, telephony, over into Skype for Business as well. We were actually going to do phase 2. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but that's okay today because the question is absolutely valid, is the fact that we end up shelving phase 2 because of the fact we have call centers and things like that, and we do not feel that our call centers are ready to make that jump or that switch. Right now we have, I believe, a VIA in our call centers, and let's just say that's where the money is being made right now, and we are not about, no touchy. That's exactly it. No, don't touch the llama, and that's the llama. So again, a Fortnite reference for those of you who good times. Anywho, all right. So let's talk about Office 365 configuration considerations. So on-off worlds. Office 365 administration is definitely simplified. So if I want to turn on Dell or Office Graph, I can literally just flip the switch. Just because of that is there, that's the good thing. It's very easy. They've simplified to a degree, and I'm using this very tongue-in-cheek. They simplified being able to actually work with as SDS group to turn things on or make things available to your end users. Simplified, not the silver bullet, however. Secondly, the new features are easy to deploy. It's one system. So when Power Apps came online, Power Apps were available. When Power BI was there, we ended up going to E5 licensing. It was available to everyone who was an information worker automatically. And we have this huge initiative with Power BI as an example. And it was very easy for us to deploy. They want to use Power BI? Great. Click on the Power BI tab, or tile rather, Go to Power BI. Over in the top right, you have that little arrow pointing down at the little line. Click on Download Desktop, and away you go. It's self-service. Makes it very easy for them to jump in and actually become a part of the Office 365 dichotomy. Did I use that word right? Sometimes I invent new words. It's phenomenal. But for those of you who don't know me, I speak two languages, English and bad English, and I only use the secondary. So, good times. Off-world. So the bad. Office 365 administration is simplified. You're like, didn't you just have that in the previous slide? Yes, I did. There's good parts of it and there's bad parts of it. Sometimes you want a little bit more control. This is when you break out the PowerShell. And this is when you start doing other stuff. Then PowerShell for licensing. Good times. I think they had Uncle Backwards. How many of you remember Captain Kangaroo? Anyone? Oh, fabulous. I'm not alone. Good. For those of you young ones who never heard of Captain Kangaroo, it was a kid's show when I was actually a kid. Yes, I was a kid at one time. According to my kids, I was born in, I dated Cleopatra before Mark Antony, but that's another story. Long story short, there was a character called Uncle Backwards, and he would do everything backwards. Well, whoever did the PowerShell for licensing, totally backwards. When you turn it on, it turns everything on. How many of you understand about Office 365 licensing? If you turn on like an E3 license, there's all these sub-licenses underneath, right? When you flip it on, it turns everything on. And to turn them off, then you have to go backwards to turn off after you turn everything on. It's phenomenal. And you should see the PowerShell script that my boys use. Fabulous. I swear my Exchange team probably actually dreams in binary, but that's a whole nother story. And activation of services, that's also interesting because when it's turned on, if you're not paying attention, if you're not aware, guess what? There was, I think, one thing that slipped through the cracks was, I think, Flow, and also I'm getting questions about Flow. I'm like, oh snap, I forgot to block that. Good times. And so when things kind of get slid in there, you have to understand that can be put you in a bad situation where all of a sudden you're going to be asked questions, or is there training for, and you have to be aware, and that's where the whole flexibility comes in as well. And then lessons learned. I talked about the SharePoint sites, the SharePoint tile planner. We turned off, when it was just Office 365 groups, we turned it off using Exchange. You know what I'm talking about. There was an Exchange rule that you could put in place where you would block Office 365 groups. We had that turned on. Awesome. Planner came out. One of the ones that kind of flew under the radar. All of a sudden we see Office 365 groups popping up. I'm like, where'd that come from? And I'm like, hello. And sure enough, people were using Planner to create an Office 365 group anyways. And of course, by that time, it's too late. Like, okay, we'll keep the one in OWA off. However, I guess we'll keep Planner on. And so we left. And so that's how we were introduced to Office 365 groups. Awesome. In the Windows Corporate Store, we actually did keep it off. However, there was definitely value to that, and we've actually started to implement the Windows Corporate Store as well. So third-party solutions, we actually went through this. We used Microsoft Gold Partners. We did actually use different things from the corporate store, for example, SharePoint apps that come from the SharePoint store. We have several that have been purchased and are being used heavily, as well as the corporate store, where we're actually doing things such as Adobe, like the Adobe PDF reader and stuff like that, just to make it more self-service. We're using it in that manner.
Does that require an Intune license?
No, it does not. The Intune license is mainly for mobility and being able to actually interact. The question was, for the corporate store to work, do you need an Intune license? The answer is no. So you can have the corporate store running, it's its own separate entity. Where the Intune would come into play is allowing them to use certain applications on their mobile device. Intune it's been designed for the bring your own device, BYOD, I guess, BYOD crowd.
But, so maybe I'm not understanding what you meant by the store. Are you uploading your own packages to that store?
We could, but for the most part, right now we're keeping using KISS methodology, keeping it simple, silly, where we actually are just using what's already available in the store, like Adobe Reader, like a few other things that we used to have either A in our image or B would just have people download from a trusted site. Air quotes on that.
I thought that it was only available as part of the Intune license.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That's a good question, but no, we didn't at the time when we released the corporate store. We did not actually have Intune even turned on at that time. Yep, great. No, that's a great question. Third-party solutions. Sometimes it feels like you're putting a square peg in a round hole. When you buy a third-party solution, like an app or something like that, a lot of times you're buying it because it hits 90% of what you're looking for, and it's just missing like 5 or 10%, and you're like, I can live with that. So it's a positive and a negative. Another thing is with the third-party solutions, you're looking at additional cost as to be expected. So you have to also keep in mind your budgets in mind when you go with third-party solutions. It also increases the level of complexity, as you can imagine. One of the things I have to do, I do it usually bi-weekly, is to go in and see if anyone's actually made a request for a SharePoint application, see if it's in the list of people's requests, and then go in and actually either approve or deny it.
So are you allowing departments to buy their own apps, or they have to go through IT to buy them?
They buy their own apps. The way the process is, they go in, they find an app they like in the SharePoint store. Let's use it because that's the easiest one to go with. They go in, they want this weather widget 101, and so they buy it. So they go to the store, they say apply for it. The request comes to me. I give them the yay or nay. I usually do some research, make sure it doesn't have major bugs or et cetera. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is fine. I then approve it so it can be brought into the environment, but then it's up to them to use their cost center to actually acquire the licenses for that particular application. And thus the increases complexity. Third-party solutions, thank goodness Netscope is gone. However, I'd like to keep it there because of the fact it is a third-party solution. We were too big for it. I do not want to throw Netscope under the bus. They were phenomenal. What they did was phenomenal. They were basically a proxy that we had all of our Office 365 stuff going through. They just were not ready for a company of our size to handle. But the thing is, they had things where we could make rules in Netscope where people couldn't upload any documents to anywhere in Office 365 that had credit card numbers, social security card, any PII information, PCI information, or anything like that. So it was definitely a good tool. We just were way too big for it. They were not ready for a corporation our size. Hive, still use it. We have to use it because we use Skype for Business broadcast. In fact, we had three in the last 2 days. 2 yesterday, 1 today. We actually had our new CEO, Sandy, actually have his first all hands. Over 3,500 people joined us on that broadcast, plus we had another 100, almost 200 in the auditorium that he was speaking in.
What is Hive? What does it do?
Great question. So Hive is a third-party solution that basically turns every single computer into a node. So instead of every single computer actually going out to the internet to get the stream, whoever the first one is on that subnet goes out and becomes the node and feeds everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason why we first broadcast we ever did, we brought our corporate headquarters to a grinding halt. And when I mean grinding, as in no information was either entering or leaving. That's how, because it was with Sherry Goodman, first one, it was in December 2016. Let's just say we were a little shocked at how many people actually wanted to see what was going on. And so within a matter of minutes, we actually killed our connection. So with Hive, we literally save 85% of our bandwidth because of the fact that each sub, there's only one or two computers per subnet that actually is going out to the internet. Everyone else is feeding off of those computers.
Is that a Microsoft product? Or
it is not. It's a third party, and yeah, it is. Okay, I do have third party up there, but it's absolutely phenomenal. I highly, if you do Skype for Business broadcast at any length or level for large corporations, I highly recommend Hive to you.
Does it also work for syncing or no?
For syncing, meaning?
For syncing SharePoint to your document syncing.
Oh, great question. So the question is, does it also work for syncing SharePoint? The answer is no, oddly enough. It literally is just built for broadcasting technologies and services. That's where you're going to get the most heaviest traffic, because let's face it, a audio video stream, and we actually have our own production studio in-house. Yep. And so we have they have a command center, and they're pushing out some pretty heavy level streams. Yep. And so that's where that comes in. As far as the synchronization for SharePoint online, we actually still use the OneDrive synchronization client. And that works very, very well. Office 365 is not a silver bullet. I think we all know that, so I'm not going to dwell on that at all. Mike, I need you to keep me honest on time as well, because you know I can go till the end of time. Okay, good. So about a half hour. Okay, I can do that. So let's go into a deep dive. Let's actually go into some of the products as we released them in the timeline that we released it, and tell you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starting with Yammer. I told you it started as public. It was actively used. 449 groups. It's probably now around 600 to 700 groups, and it's continuing to grow. Interesting side effect, and I think it's on the bad. So I'm going to have to actually add this to the bad probably, but the confusion, what is the use cases? One of the things that we did when we released SharePoint is we had 8 different areas for them to go, all parts of Office 365. And I actually manned the Yammer table. One of the biggest questions is, what is Yammer for? I had a lot of directors and vice presidents go, what's this thing for? Why would I even want to use it? And I said there's 2 different cases that I love to use, and they're complete opposites of each other. The first one is you're a brand new hire. I said, if you're a new hire, you don't have a clue where to turn to or ask a question. I said, our company's huge. I've been there for almost 2 years. I still have areas that I have no clue about. And the long and the short of it says, if I have a question, Yammer is the place to go. I will do a search for a group. If I can't find a group, I'll use all company. I say, look, I have a question. I'm new. I'm trying to find this person or this resource or this solution. Who do I go to? And someone always knows and is able to answer. I said, that's one side of the coin. Go ahead.
How open or closed was the culture in this company to having that kind of communication? Worked in companies where it's like, don't talk to anybody outside of your group because we don't want them to know anything. And how'd you get that?
So the question is, how open or closed was the company, Staples Corporation as a whole, as far as this level of communication? Honestly, because it was the first thing that came in, there was some level of acceptance. However, it was not pushed very heavily. We did not see our growth in Yammer. We had about 1,200 people out of 25,000 information workers that even signed up for Yammer. The thing that kind of pushed it over the top and started to give it momentum is when Sherry Goodman was announced as our interim CEO before she became our actual CEO. She decided on her own, I want to write a blog. Used her Dell Blog, and every Friday, nonstop during her tenure, she would actually release her blog post and post it to Yammer and say, come to my blog post. When she did that, we jumped from 1,200 to 8,500 in less than 2 weeks. Bingo. What's in it for me? And all of a sudden, that's what opened up the eyes, and that's where the value came, because someone from the executive board actually used it as a workhorse to tell people. And the thing is, Shira, in some of her blogs, I think this is one of my favorite stories. She said she gave her favorite quote, and it was awesome. And she's like, but there was a question at the end of the blog, and for those who read it, what is your favorite quote? Yammer lit up like no one's business, and to the point where Shira was actually replying back, and we ended up for over a year having a lot of those quotes plastered up on the walls on the first floor because Shira Goodman liked the quotes that she's like, these are some awesome quotes. So there was an interaction, and all of a sudden there was a personability that came from, she's not just some person that sits on the top of the pyramid, but she actually shared with me and actually took something from me, and all of a sudden that gave it credibility, and Yammer took off from there. Dave.
Question online. How did you keep up with moderating so many groups in Yammer?
That's why I look like Don King when I have longer hair. No, I kid. The long and the short of it is, we actually personalized, as you know, you can personalize the piece. If we've had situations where I had to go in and delete posts that had phone numbers or personal information in it, and so we would, when that happened, very quickly people would pick up on it and say, hey, Yammer team, me, this is up there, you need to get rid of it. And for the most part, it's been self-policing. There are certain groups that are private groups that I don't have access to, but we have not had any incidents as of yet. And one of the I think I attribute that to the fact that the ELA, I guess, the end user license agreement, quote unquote, that we wrote said, look, you're going to have to put your big girl, big boy pants on. The same thing that we expect for you with email, we expect the same courtesies in Yammer as well. And it's worked to this point. Now, as things continue to get more lively, there is a potential or possibility I'm going to have to be a little bit more active, but to this point, fortunately, I have not had to be. Again, no training. I did say so one side of the coin, talk to everybody. And then I said the flip side, we can take it from a wide scope to a very narrow scope. Have your own Yammer group specifically to your team. And I say, how many times have you had an email that turns into a conversation? And every single one of them said, about 5 minutes ago. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I said, and how often have you deleted all of the pieces to that conversation and accidentally deleted the one strain that was good and the others were all about lunch? And they're like, all the time. So that's what Yammer's for. I said, if you see an email turning into a conversation, copy the entire body of the email that of value, put into a Yammer stream, target everyone that was part of the email, and have the conversation continue there so that it's actually captured.
That recommendation change now with Teams?
I wouldn't. Possibly. And so Teams is persistent chat. You certainly can do that. It depends on the situation. You got to be careful because persistent chat can be interesting at times. Dave?
Another online question. Statement. Question. Sounds like with the Yammer culture, you are priming them for Teams.
Yes, we are. Go ahead, Mike.
You seem to be alluding there to a difference between the native functionality between Teams and Yammer by referring to that as persistent chat. How is that persistent chat of Teams different in your mind to Yammer's base functionality?
Good question. Persistent chat. So when persistent chat, I see as something that is on the fly or quick. Questions can be asked in persistent chat and answered, but I find it not as. I could probably do an entire session on this actually, because it's kind of loaded. It all depends on the culture. Right now, Staples is more comfortable with Yammer than Teams. In time, will Yammer be absorbed by Teams? Probably. I'm kind of feeling it. I'm kind of curious to see where Microsoft does truly go with that. But as of right now, it's not the case. And so you're going to find different use cases. To your point, or to your question, can you do it with the Teams persistent chat? Absolutely. There's no reason why you could not. I think the reason why I kind of leaned over to Yammer is because people at Staples is more used to Yammer, and we're not ready to unleash the full beast of Teams because it is a beast. Because we just released Skype for Business, and we're on the TAP program for Skype for Teams. We've been helping them put it together, mold it, put it together. I'm on Ring 1.5, so I see some stuff real early on. A lot of stuff is really cool. Can't wait. But we just released Skype for Business. We're still, let's just say the pitchforks and torches are still behind them in their cube. We're not ready yet to actually push Teams too heavily.
So is releasing Skype for Business confusing people as to when to use Yammer and when to use Skype for Business?
Not
similar things.
They do similar things, but not to the degree. One of the biggest things is they did have as an instant messaging, well, they meaning a sub portion of who has Skype for Business, did have Jabber that had fake persistent chat. One of the biggest complaints when we first released Skype for Business is why every time I open up the window with John Marr, I can't see what I talked to him last. I said it's been conversation history and Outlook. They're like, why is it there? I'm like, that's because that's how it works with Skype for Business. I don't like it. Sorry, this is the way that the company is going. I feel your pain, but trust me, it's kind of cool when you can, someone says, I didn't say that, and like, oh, really? And then you can email them the conversation you had right out of your conversation history. They're like, oh, I didn't think of that. Okay. And then they would usually be a little bit happier and walk off. But the long and the short of it is, it's definitely something that has, Skype for Business, the instant messaging piece, has skyrocketed. It went from literally 0 to the second greatest used resource in Office 365 within a matter of a month. The only thing that has more is email right now, and Skype for Business is rapidly catching up because as far as numbers is concerned. Great questions, guys. Keep them coming. So I actually talked about that. I knew it was in here. So remember how I talked to you about how Shira Goodman would post her blog into Yammer? This was before we had the F1 licenses and before we have released our to our sales associates. So what did they do? They said, you know what, these blog posts are so awesome. They would copy the entire blog post instead of just a portion of it, put it into the email, and send it to everybody anyways. And so all of a sudden, you can see Yammer usage, wha-pang, and back down to the 1,200 that was initially using Yammer to begin with. Why? Because they decided to use the email. One of the things, and it was an uphill battle, and I decided not to fight that battle because I had so many other battles to deal with. I said, why did you do that? You should have done the first few lines and the link to it, to the internal people, and then just send the whole thing just to the people who do not have access to Office 365. Again, that's a whole nother story, but the long and the short of it is that's what we learned. When you have your senior leadership actually using the tools in Office 365, they will follow very quickly. Grassroots is really good, but you're not going to see the same adoption rate that you're going to see when you have your executives using the tools. Period. That's just the nature of the animal.
But David, I mean, most people live in email. And so there's probably a certain level of people going, why is it Yammer? I hate using Yammer. Why can't it just be emailed out? And so although what's in it for me is kind of there to go there, and they're necessarily happy when they're used to using your email.
Agreed. Excuse me. Fortunately, I have water. I totally agree with you on that, and it's definitely a battle that every single company is going to face. You're going to have to figure out how to go to actually face those giants.
I mean, just keep giving these links in email instead of sending a document is hard.
That being said, email is not a good tool, period. End of story. Have a nice day. I know, I said I can't believe it's sacrilege. Sacrilege. The long and the short of it, it is good to get information across from one person to the other, kind of like foregoing the snail mail methodology. It is not good for conversations. Sorry. It is not good for collaboration. Sorry. There are certain things email is good for, but not for 99% of the stuff it's being used for. How many people in your companies are using email as an archive?
Yeah.
Emailing themselves files.
Bingo.
It is not a good thing. One of the things this is going to be down the road, I would love to teach them is how to use a flow. So when you get a freaking attachment, it automatically grabs it, puts it in your OneDrive. That would be awesome. Stop using Outlook as an archive. Sorry, it's not a file server. It was never meant to be used as a file server. I've talked about this. In fact, we're talking again about this. Mail jail, email anywhere, PST, the reliance, the number of PSTs, Gad, Zooks, Batman. On-prem to the cloud, the bad was on-prem to the cloud. It took some effort, as you can imagine. When we had between group email boxes and everything else, it took a while. It took 8-10 months, I think, to get everyone from on-prem into the cloud, and there was some very painful moments during that migration.
Did the FTC move you guys to go on-prem to the cloud?
No, we actually did ourselves.
You keep referencing.
Yeah, they're freaking amazing. Like I said, the Exchange team that they have is absolutely phenomenal.
Is there a way to move from PST files back to cloud? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there are tools out there that will allow you to do that. Again, the cost versus value, and that, like I said, for us, despite the number of PST files, we actually taught people if you want to move information from your PST, this is how you do it, and we gave them step by step. And actually show them how to migrate their own stuff. If you really want it in the cloud that badly, so it's on every device, then this is what you do. Great question. And that's why I have PST Aftermath. The PST Aftermath was absolutely nightmarish. And of course, the biggest offenders were the executive board because they had crazy amounts of email. And of course, a lot of them were on holds and things like that. And so that was definitely interesting.
The set of instructions, is that something you're able to share with us? Or? The set of instructions for moving comms. What do you
Oh, I mean, it was as simple as you go click in Outlook, click on your email address at the very top. Don't put in your inbox because we have a rule saying everything in your inbox only lasts for 180 days. Have a nice day. Still. Despite the fact that mail jail is done, for some reason we brought that inbox rule along. I know.
Then go archived or permanent?
Permanent kill.
Oh.
Oh, indeed. And so I'm with you. I get it. I totally understand. I'm still kind of scratching my head on that one, but that's the nature of the animal. So we taught them. Click on your email address at the very top above inbox, right click new folder, and then you can actually migrate whatever you want into that new folder. Call it, archive, grandma's laundry, I don't care. Just that's how you do it. It was pretty straightforward. and it also helped us because we're not on the rope to have that. I think that was the biggest thing, is like if they want it in there, that's fine. They have to do it themselves. And of course, training is necessary. That is me. And when someone snookered me into taking that shot, yeah, snookered. I'm all about taking pictures. It's all good. OneDrive. And how much time do I have left? I'm gonna have to make this deck available, most likely. It is really, is it? Do you want me to continue, or should I like trail off?
No, keep going.
Okay. So let's talk about the good really quick. I'll talk really quick. Definitely ask questions if they jump up. The removal of personal drives, that's on the way. I'm actually still mapped to a personal drive, never used it. I've always used OneDrive ever since I walked through the doors, and a lot of people are actually doing the same thing, and that's the whole pick up their entire My Documents or picking up all their folders and driving in. It's like, I had to leave my laptop overnight, and it took 8 hours and something minutes in order to get all my stuff there. I'm like, yeah, it's you're kind of wedged into 2 gigs an hour, and they're like, oh, that explains it. I've got X amount of gigs. I'm like, yeah, I know. So that's one thing that we're working on, is actually the removal of personal drives. And we're actually going to have My Documents, the desktop, and pictures, I believe, all actually point to OneDrive on our Windows 10 profile.
You use OneDrive as a roaming profile.
On the nose. Shadow IT hunting. Once we release OneDrive, I've put on my Elmer Fudd hat, and I've been killing anything and everything that is not OneDrive. That means Google Drive, I kill that. Dropbox, I kill that, and everything else in between. And so, and we have been actively looking for that, for the offenders, and actually saying, you have OneDrive now, move it there, please. Or SharePoint, if you are sharing with multiple targets, move it there. Oh yeah, huge security issue. No one wants to be the next TJX. Oddly enough, one of the people on the Microsoft team that is for the Staples actually used to work for TJX and was there at the time, and he said that was a nightmare. Moving to digital workspace. One of the things that, as you can kind of guess, a lot of people are working from home. This is freeing things up tremendously. VPN was painful at best. Yes, we are in process of upgrading our VPN system. We're also have finally talked security to changing our security policy to allow split tunneling for Office 365. Finally, because of the fact that they understand, look, it's already encrypted, and then we're double encrypting it, and people are going to get the pitchforks and torches out when we just say it's not our fault, talk to security, and then they're like, oh, okay. Finally. And of course, escape from VPN. And the fact that people, as long as they have multi-factor authenticate and go into Office 365, they have the ability to work even from their home devices. And with the 5 copies available to them, they can even use the newest version of Office on their home computer, courtesy of working at Staples. The bad, the low adoption rate for OneDrive. It took a long time, and that's the reason why I told you we're going to do another communique and to actually push this out one more time.
So when you first deployed OneDrive, did you guys leverage like just completely organic, like create and do what you want? If you want to move, say, like your home drive content or local content, this is how you do it type strategy? Did you guys do a migration of like, you know, desktop content and then synchronization, or what was the strategy from the start? And
great question.
How do you think that impacted the adoption rates?
So the question is, for those of you online, is how did we deal with it? Did we do it organically, or did we actually do a migration? We did it organically, as in it was I mean, James Bond would have been proud of us. We flew under the radar phenomenally. That's the reason for the low adoption rate, and that's the reason why we're going to do it again, and we're going to be a little bit more loud, a little bit more boisterous. I'll probably have to wear the pants again, but I mean, that being said, yes, we did it organically. But the thing is, when I did Tech Tuesdays and things like that, one of the first questions I would ask is, how do I get my files when I'm snowed in and left my laptop? I'm like, well, didn't you put your files in OneDrive? What's that? And so over time, and they tell their friends and so on and so on, kind of a Wayne's World thing going on there. That's kind of what's been happening. So it was definitely grassroots. And so what ended up happening is the OneDrive synchronization client, as I continue to tell people, they would tell other people, and so they started to turn that on, because we didn't actually turn it on for them. They actually had to go into Windows search, type OneDrive, see the setup.exe. They ran it the first time, and then they were up and running. Mike?
We have a question from one of our internet users.
Okay.
Were you able to carry over all of the nested folder structure and permissions from OneDrive, and what was your strategy for that?
Good times. So I'm going to word it slightly different to make sure I'm getting it straight. So what they're asking is, when people move their folder structure from their personal drive into OneDrive, did the permissions stick around as well as everything else? The answer is no, it did not. It did not stick around. It does not migrate the permission sets with. So you have to be careful. Not if you drag and drop. No, if you use a migration tool, and it's a smart migration tool, ShareGate is one, I believe, that can do that.
SharePoint migration tool.
The SharePoint migration tool.
And that's free.
Which is free, does that. Metalogic's content manager also works as well, I believe.
It's true, SkySync.
SkySync?
Happy to talk about it if anyone wants to talk about it.
So there are definitely solutions out there.
Sponsor of this here user group. Thank you.
Yes, there you go. So there are definitely different tools out there to make that reality, but if you drag and drop, understand it's going to go with the same permissions of your just OneDrive, which is just you, and then you're going to have to dole out the permissions as well. Also, understand if you have a deep personal drive folder structure, there's a high potential that you're probably going to break the 256 character limit. Also, you may have file names with odd characters in it, question mark, pound sign, two periods back to back, slashes. You've got to go and clean up your mess before you can actually migrate it in, or else it's going to get very cranky really quick.
Yeah, period followed by an open parenthesis. I ran into that. That was a weird one.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there are character combinations that are weird. But
yeah.
I had my hand raised for a different reason. There's another question online.
Okay, go for it.
Despite the low adoption rate for OneDrive, did you or do you have any champions who did it right, and will you leverage them to bring others on board?
The answer is yes. Oddly, one of the biggest proponents was at the time Shara Goodman, the CEO. We ended up moving all her stuff from her personal drive over because she had so many different devices. It was the only solution that we really had for her to leverage. That being said, there are others as well, but you're looking at pretty much the mouth of the South, or the North in this case, where I'm the one who's been pretty much preaching to the hills on that one.
So I keep thinking back to Michelle Caldwell's talks about using gaming theory to get people to adopt.
Yep.
Doing some of that in contests and things like that. And I would think too, the people who travel, your salespeople who travel, who need to go in the VPN the most, who have the most pain.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I have so much room for opportunity. I have so many ideas for staples, but being only one person, it's kind of difficult to make that happen. So for those of you who online, she was talking about Michelle Caldwell, who's a good friend of mine. She did a session called Gamification, and there's a book out there called Game Storming. I absolutely highly recommend it. I've read it. It was recommended to me by Michelle, actually, and it is phenomenal. It is a great book. It's a great read. It's light, it's fun, but it is actually absolutely imperative for a corporation to use at times in order to gain, as you're pointing out, some adoption. Gamification, make it a game, make it something tangible that people can either compete with, or even just compete with themselves and to just see if they can one up themselves. Again, communication is key. I think I've pretty much hit that one on the head. And then usage increases potential valuable electronic collateral increases. Nothing like saying a mouthful. The long and short of it is OneDrive can actually collect a lot of information that is of higher value to the company. When we went private, about was it 8 months ago now, 7-8 months ago, we went through a lot of restructuring. Unfortunately, a lot of tacit knowledge had to walk through the doors. It's all part of the process. That being said, some of the OneDrives that were being used had an inordinate amount of valuable electronic information that did not walk out the door with the individuals, and we were able to retain knowledge that could have been otherwise lost. So OneDrive has definitely come to be a valuable use. Mike?
It just occurred to me, with this incredible use of OneDrive that you guys have, what is your offboarding policy for dealing with OneDrives before they go away?
So the question is, what is our offboarding policy for when a person leaves the company? What happens to the OneDrive?
Well, I know what happens.
It disappears. After you just disable the account, you've got a timer starts counting down.
90 days.
90 days. At the 60-day mark, if they have not been rehired or the activity of that account has not incurred, what ends up happening is an email goes out to the immediate manager of that individual saying, you have 30 days remaining. We have opened up this individual's OneDrive to you to see if there's any valuable information that is of value to you and your team before it goes away. You have 30 days to do this. Once the 30 days is up, that's the end of it. It's the old aim in the end. However, they do have 30 days to go in and see if there's information of high value that the team cannot lose, and I will actually grab that and allow them to grab that.
So, but what are the actions that they would actually do? Would the manager then pull the data into their OneDrive?
Or into their SharePoint site? It depends. That's one of the things I love. That's one of the things that I do love about the OneDrive is the ability to move things from OneDrive to SharePoint much more easily now because of the modern technology that they finally, years later, have actually implemented. Back in the day, I ended up having a lot of clients use the Synergy copy and paste tool, which was phenomenal as an add-on. But anyways, enough reminiscing. Go ahead, Mike.
One more question from online.
Sure.
Finance and legal are typically units that are historically paper-based.
Yep.
How was the adoption / onboarding of these teams? Ecstatic, kicking or screaming, or a mixture?
It's a mixture. As you would expect, oddly enough, I have this wonderful woman, Betsy, from legal, that she has pretty much embraced it because of the fact she is part of our Holds legal team. And so Office 365 has significantly made strides forward in the Holds department that are absolutely phenomenal. And because of that, the rest of the legal department has fallen suit and actually has started to use Office 365 security and compliance heavily, as well as other areas as well because of that feature.
Are they using another document control tool for contract management, or are they using Office 365 for contract management?
So the question is, are they using Office 365 as a contract management tool or another tool? The answer is currently they're using another tool, or another tools, I should say, more accurately. Please understand, Staples has grown organically a lot over the last 20 plus years, and very fast and in multiple directions all at the same time. We have over 3,200 applications that we're currently trying to manage and maintain. We have one guy who has actually mapped out every single one of those. We have a plot table, and his entire wall has this huge chart of every single application that we have in-house. It's phenomenally scary. It's what nightmares are made of. And you're right, it's expensive. And so one of the things that I have as my own personal goal in the next 3 to 5 years, once the adoption is there, is I want to actually knock off about, I would say 25% of those by having Office 365 absorb them. That's my personal goal. I'm not saying that's Staples' goal, but that's my personal goal, to see that number decrease heavily. Great question. SharePoint, it's a collaboration upgrade. Email was the heavy hitter, and of course file servers. As you can imagine, so every possible, every bad habit that they learn in file server, I'm trying to reteach them. Like stop, writing War and Peace as the file name. Important document January 2018. Important document February 2018. Important document 2018. Final, star, final. Stop doing that. They love version control. So that's one of the Me Too's that has actually helped adoption, and SharePoint has pretty much been selling itself. All right, long story short, I could keep going on. I got the tap on the watch, which means I will make this deck available if it's not already. I believe I have this deck on SlideShare.net, I think. I will actually tweet it out either later this evening or within the next business day.
Microsoft property.
Right? Sweet. But anyway, do you have any final questions? I know I went over a lot, and like I said, there's a lot more in here. I do apologize.
Somebody's typing.
Uh-oh, somebody's typing? Dun, dun, dun. Go ahead.
One of the things that we ran into, maybe rudimentary for this group, but the 256 character limit, is there anything around that, or?
You shouldn't off the top of your head.
Online.
Online,
The
yeah.
sync, the desktop sync is still 256.
Yeah, so the 256 characters currently is a ceiling that I would say some things can sort of work around it using shortened URLs and things like that. It could get expensive doing that, I'll tell you right now. Other systems use things like tags, and I could go and help. The long and the short of it is the way, and you guys are hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I tell everybody in Staples when they ask me this question, one layer folders, the rest metadata. Have a nice day. It's a hard thing to understand, especially someone coming from a folder-heavy community. And one of the things I get it. I mean, I feel the pain right here. You feel the pain right in your chest, right? I totally get it. But at the same time, I tell them, do you understand that your folder structure actually is the metadata structure? And of course, you get the deer in the headlights. It's like, let me explain. The folder you should use in SharePoint is reports. Then the metadata, you should use the year, because you have a folder labeled the year. You have a month, a quarter, boom, boom. Oh, hey, also like Don's on. It's like, oh, I can do that with metadata? Yes, absolutely. And oh, by the way, throw a little Power BI against that. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff, but that's a whole nother story.
Show them views.
Just views alone. I know. It blows their mind. It's just amazing. And that's one of the things you have to do. We, as a entire entity, all people across the entire globe have been basically poorly trained when it comes because of the file server limitations. And so basically what we want to do is actually teach our end users, it was done that way, that's the only way we had. Use version control. Don't keep renaming the file name. Do this, do that. And what ends up happening is all of the simplicity starts to seep in, because let's face it, if it's not hard, then I must be doing it wrong mentality kind of starts to go away. Mike.
One last question from online.
Okay.
How do you keep on top of the ever-releasing feature set from Microsoft?
Following the user group.
So one of the things I do highly recommend, I would follow the Office 365 user group. The big changes that are being made.
Online, I swear.
Yeah, no, it's fine. The big changes that are being made, the Office 365 user group is going to say, let's face it, that's why we're here. We're kind of like basically a family who's like getting beat up by the same tool. So let's you like how it's not like we're fighting Mike Tyson, but maybe McGregor. But anyway, you get what I mean. But there's other things, there's other resources as well. Microsoft is very clear what's being released on fasttrack.microsoft.com, I believe. I believe that's what, or Office 365 Fast Track Roadmap. Okay. Oh, that's right.
Clear is a relative term.
Yeah.
It's clear as mud, I agree, but there is other things out there. If you're the Office 365 admin, make sure you watch the boards that are in the Office 365 administration. Make sure you keep up with it, because all that stuff is going to churn and burn. They'll let you know in there as well. As long as you keep up with that, you'll be good. Thanks for putting up with. You guys all look like the guy from the Memorex commercial. Your hair's blowing back. It's frightening, but it's okay today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was awesome sauce. Sweet. Oh, you had 6 slides left.
Not bad.
Yeah. Unlike when I presented. Still kind of shuddering about that one. 2 hours. 2 hours. It was a long talk. Anyway, cool. Thank you, Dave. A couple upcoming community events. There are other user groups in the Boston area that they're not as cool as ours. The Hartford one's trying, but he's not there yet. But if you're interested in these other technologies, feel free to check them out. We won't be too offended. These are the ones that they've published so far, and these are just some upcoming events. SharePoint conference is next week. That's the 21st, right? Anybody going to that?
I like the URL SharePoint.
Yeah. It's like Windows NT.
So I heard you signed up for it. The first there's like 2 hours on Monday next week.
Yes, there's a digital summit. Yep.
You just got to sign up for it. It's free.
Yep, absolutely. May 21st is, I'm sorry?
Where is it?
This one's in Vegas, but there's a virtual summit, like the keynote basically is a virtual summit. You can watch it online. May 21st is PowerShell. June 7th is a debrief of the SPNA SharePoint conference at the Granite State User Group.
Is that going to be Mark?
Probably Mark and Julie, I would imagine. June 11th, my company Slalom is partnering with Microsoft for an App in a Day 201. So we've been hosting App in a Days, really basic introduction to Power Apps and Flow. This 201 is going to dive in with more integrations, more capabilities, best practices, tips, and tricks. So if you're interested in that, hit that link or talk to me after this. And that'll be that's hosted here. It's an all-day workshop. Are we missing anything? I gotta animate that a little faster.
There's a Teams event here next week.
Is a Teams event here next week?
I believe so.
Yeah,
That sounds cool.
that does sound cool.
We should do that.
It's like a,
Better not be a user
it's like
group.
an open workshop hosted by a couple partners.
Okay. Cool.
Why not?
If you
29th of this month?
Sunday.
cool, send that. We will be sending a post-session email with these events in it and the links, and I will add that one to it.
Yep.
Awesome. Next month, we have Chris Bortlick, assembling an engaging communication site. I didn't read the description. I don't know what else to say about it. My apologies. It's going to be good because it's Portland.
Yeah, that's right.
It's about communication sites in SharePoint, probably about building or assembling them. That's all I got. It's going to be good. I'm sure it'll be all the latest capabilities. Come with your questions. Chris loves questions.
I was just thinking of doing that as a topic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. Any? We want to open up this time. We got plenty of time here. Any problems? Any gotchas? Anything you could want to share after Arthur? Go ahead, Arthur.
Simple question.
Yes.
You have the team site synced to local computers for the various users. If a user accidentally deletes a file on the local computer, does this deletion then propagate every place?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there any way to reverse that?
Yeah,
Recycle bin.
It'd be in the recycle bin in the SharePoint site.
Where's that recycle bin?
SharePoint.
In the SharePoint or the OneDrive, depending on which they deleted it from.
Check the Windows recycle bin too. So we did that.
It wasn't in the Windows recycle bin.
It wasn't?
Not usually, no.
Because we had a similar problem. Mike, Dimitri, and I, somebody deleted a folder of files between the three of us, and it ended up in my recycle bin in Windows. I swear I didn't delete it, but it was there. I wouldn't have. This is the files I use every time I put together one of these decks. I don't know how it got deleted, but it was in my recycle bin.
Where were you on the night of?
I know.
There's the recycle.
Whatever library was used that was synchronizing down, the site that library lives in has a recycle bin. Go into that.
All right.
So if you go
You
to
have
the
to go
site
to the
contents,
portal.
go to the web portal and then go to site contents. And then at the top of the site contents, there's going to be a link to the recycle bin.
Property. Thank you.
And if you're wondering how to get there, because a lot of people have that problem too. When you're in Teams and you're looking at files, so you're in, let's say, the general. It used to, the file used to be in